What impact could Bedlam 2008 have on Oklahoma and Oklahoma State in the future, including Saturday night's Big 12 championship game? From the Dodge Sports Desk, I'm Mike Sherman, and this is the Bedlam Nation Conversation. With me today, as always, our OU beat writer Jake Trotter and OSU beat writer Scott Wright. Guys, OU won 61-41 last Saturday in Stillwater. The outcome helped clinch the Sooners' spot in the Big 12 championship game against Missouri. What was revealed in that game, from both teams' standpoint, that will have some impact going forward? Start with you, Jake.
Well, I think Oklahoma showed that they can score against anyone at any point in time and anywhere in the universe. I mean, they dropped 61 off and didn't really play all that well in the first half offensively, but they scored every time they had the ball in the second half. Little luck was involved in the third quarter, but to score 61 when you really don't play all that great offensively, that's pretty impressive. For OSU, I think you're looking at a team that has a chance, depending on who goes where in the NFL draft, to be one of the favorites to win the South next year. I was really impressed with their offense.
What do you think?
Well, I think that we already knew that Oklahoma State was thin on defense, but it was really exploited, I thought, by Oklahoma in the second half of that game. The Cowboys were getting some pressure on Sam Bradford early on, forced those 3 early punts, and then you really saw them start to wear down after that, and that big Oklahoma offensive line just wore on them. And so we knew that was an issue, but it really kind of put an exclamation point on that. So Oklahoma State knows they have to go out and work really hard to get some defensive linemen in there that can make an impact, so they can beef up that rotation.
I mean, these folks have to be distance runners these days in the Big 12 with the sheer number of snaps they have to play. I've never seen a season like this, 60, 60, 61, 41 points. Do you think, Scott, that really anybody has the ability to rush the passer that many times against Oklahoma?
Well, you've got to at least have enough guys out there that you can do it and not be getting winded all the time. Because they run at such a fast pace, you don't have a lot of time to substitute. So you've got to be able to get guys that can last on a long drive out there and substitute when you have the chance. So it's a matter, I think, more of numbers than asking a guy to do it a whole bunch over and over.
It's curious. I thought OU had more trouble protecting Bradford against Oklahoma State than anyone this year. I really thought OSU did a nice job getting to him. Now, they could never get him down when they got back there. They took bad angles and whatnot. But it's curious that their pass rush is so bad throughout the year, and then against a team like OU who never gets sacked, that they're able to put pressure in the backfield. That really could have been a big factor for them if they could have sacked Bradford on those 3 or 4 times they had him flushed out of the pocket.
That's why I think Tim Beckman has taken a lot of criticism from Oklahoma State fans this year because they've even up some big numbers at times. But he's really proven, I think, to me, to be a really good game plan coach. What he did to start creating some pressure against Missouri in that game, he had to use a similar package but different personnel to do the same thing against Oklahoma. You saw a lot more big guys out there, but still trying to get some speed on the field. He did some things I thought that were really good all throughout the season that really showed me that he's a pretty good defensive coach.
Speaking of pressure and Oklahoma State's pass rush, I guess it did produce the most memorable play of the game, and what looks like it'll be Sam Bradford's Heisman moment. For you, is that the indelible image that we'll remember about this Bedlam game? Yeah,
probably so. He was probably 11 or 12 feet in the air when you factor in his feet. So he got up there, and it led to a touchdown, because if he doesn't make that play, it's 4th down, and they're probably going to have to kick a field goal, and all of a sudden, I don't know what the score was at that point, but maybe it's a 1-possession game or a 10-point game, and maybe the result is different. So to make that play, to outrun the runner and then get inside the one on the jump and then fumble the next snap, I think that was the next play, and then pick it up and go into the end zone. That just whole sequence was pretty amazing, and he's got to keep it going, but I think that was definitely a signature moment against OSU.
Scott, from an Oklahoma State standpoint, what do you think the Cowboys will remember about that 2008 Bedlam game?
Well, I think that for one, it's going to be a little bit of a missed opportunity type of thing. You had the early interception that gets them behind the 8 ball really quick. After their defense had gone out and made a stop, then the offense is the one that turns the ball over and sets up the short field touchdown. But really, I think a lot of fans are going to remember what Zach Robinson did in that game. He didn't have the unbelievable moment that Bradford had, but the things that he did with his feet in that game, as amazing as you've seen him do in his whole career, and really shows what a tremendous athlete he is.
I thought he had a pretty good moment when he was being taken down by two guys, and he somehow got the ball off to Des Bryant, and they scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
That was probably the play of the game for OSU.
He's got some wizardry going, that's for sure, and he always looks best when he's moving. I mean, probably one of the most mobile quarterbacks. There's some moments there for an old guy like me. It was reminiscent of Fran Tarkenton. You do not see scramblers like that anymore, and he's one of the rare ones.
He has a chance to be the best quarterback in the Big 12 next year if the guys that we think might go to the NFL do. You lose Chase Daniel, Graham Harrell graduates. He might be the class of the Big 12 next year.
I kind of wonder whether he can't make that quantum leap anyway because he's got all his weapons coming back.
Maybe so.
Could be.
Let's talk about the bowl situation for OSU. Scott, you've broken it all down. It's basically Texas, Alamo, or Holiday Bowl. I'm guessing everyone wants to go to San Diego, and I do mean everyone. Is that the way it is?
Yeah, I really think so. I mean, the Cotton Bowl, I think maybe there's an added level of prestige with that bowl. Obviously, they recruit Texas hard, and so maybe being able to bring some guys up around. You can't bring in recruits technically, but they can come to you if they would want to. But maybe there's and that could also be a good matchup depending on who out of the SEC ends up coming. But really, the Cotton Bowl is kind of it's really probably out of reach at this point when you look at the depth of the Big 12 South ahead of them. Most likely, I think Texas Tech ends up there. So the Holiday is there's no shame in going to the Holiday Bowl. As a 9-3 team, you get to play a game that's pretty much the only game on at that point. There's another bowl game that's on the NFL Network at the same time that night. So you're really pretty much the only game in town. A good matchup against a Pac-10 team, most likely Oregon. That's a lot of excitement and two good offenses that's going to draw some viewers. So it would be a great trip for them to go to San Diego.
And an interesting juxtaposition because last year they were in that other bowl game that's on at the same time, the Insight Bowl, only on the NFL Network. And for a long time we've talked about the exposure for Oklahoma State. They can't get on TV. That doesn't seem to be a problem anymore. They keep playing these 7 o'clock ABC games, and this is a continuation of it. So another good bowl matchup potentially for the Cowboys. Now let's talk about Missouri. And Jake, my first question to you guys is about Missouri is, what about the OSU-Missouri game way back in October might have some applications Saturday night when the Sooners play Missouri?
Well, I was at the Texas game, so you might have a better idea of what OSU did to stop Missouri. But I think they took away Missouri's run. Is that right? They didn't allow Missouri to have a lot of big plays offensively, and did a good job of moving the ball with the run. So I think that was I don't think OU needs to follow the recipe because I think it's more of a question of OU doing what it wants to do in that particular game. But I think if you take out Missouri's run, they become one-dimensional. They're easier to stop.
Yeah, it really is because that's Derek Washington has been a good back all year. Had 11 yards against Oklahoma State that day. Once you make them one-dimensional, you can start to try to tee off on Chase Daniel. That's what Oklahoma State did. Forced him into some bad decisions, some bad throws. They get a couple of late picks that really set things up for them. And running the ball was huge. It gets forgotten because Damian Davis had the 2 long touchdown catches. Zach Robinson made another play with his feet in that game. Those are kind of the big plays that stuck out. But Kendall Hunter went for over 150 that day and really set the thing up. He had a big run early in the third quarter that got momentum on Oklahoma State's side. But yeah, running the ball and getting to Chase Daniel are probably the two big things.
When Missouri runs the ball, remember the Arkansas game, the Cotton Bowl, when Temple had 281 yards, they scored 70 or something against the Razorbacks. When that happens, they're very difficult to stop offensively. When you take out the run game, it's a little bit easier to manage.
And the Sooners tend to be a team that can make a team one-dimensional, and once that happens, it's usually all over. A big disappointment, though, for Missouri has been their defense. What happened?
Well, they returned 10 starters, and maybe they returned the 10 same guys they had last year. They weren't that good on defense. People always assume that just because you return guys, you're going to get better. But if you return a lousy defense, you're still going to be lousy. And I think that's been the case. I mean, they have a couple of notable players on there. Weatherspoon, Striker Sulak, is that how you say his name? Those guys are all Big 12, all second team, all Big 12 caliber players. But I think by and large, their entire defense is not getting it done this year. And when they've really needed them to, they haven't. The Texas game, OSU in the second half, Kansas on Saturday when they just needed one stop, they couldn't get it done.
Not the season Missouri thought about, a chance to really make their season, 7 o'clock Saturday night in Kansas City. Let's assume that the Sooners continue their success against Missouri, a team they've really owned in the Stoops era. Jake, who would be the best matchup for the Sooners competitively in the BCS championship game, Florida or Alabama?
Oh, I'm one of the guys that think that Alabama's better than people are giving them credit for.
Me too.
I mean, this is a team that plays defense, and people think just because you're a defensive-minded team that you're not any good, and that's not the case. They're not going to put up 60 on people, but who scored on them this year? No one. So they have a great defense. It's going to be a tough test for Florida and Tebow. Obviously, the Gators are more of the flashier pick, Stoops' former school, so there's a lot of intrigue there. But I always think when you put two of the most storied programs together, there's intrigue as well. And Oklahoma and Alabama, there's no one better than that.
Thanks, guys. Listen, that's all today from the Sports Desk at the Dodge Sports Desk. You can continue the conversation at bedlamnation.com, the only fan site geared to OU and OSU fans. And then follow all the news and analysis with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.